They said Earth was a myth, a cradle of nightmares wrapped in radiation and legend, where the first spark of intelligent violence scorched the stars. They said no human had been seen in 10,000 cycles, that they'd burn themselves out like a sun in collapse. They said humanity had vanished. That was what the Zarkathan Empire believed when it annexed the Aeon Spiral, what its admirals whispered when ancient sensor logs picked up ghost frequencies, patterns too chaotic to trace, signals too sharp to be natural, pulses that throbbed like the beat of a forgotten war drum. The high strategos called them anomalies, harmless, dead relics of a species that once lit the galaxy on fire and died from its own heat. That was before one of their mining fleets went silent. 9 harvesters, 2 cruisers, 3,000 crew, gone. At first, they blamed pirate. The spiral was wild in places, ripe with exiles and scavengers, desperate things that wouldn't dare draw blood from the Empire itself. But then they found the wreck. One shattered clean through the center. Another fused into molten slag. The last was still drifting, all airlocks sealed, no breach in the hull, but every living thing inside had been torn apart by something that knew exactly how many pulses a Zarkathan heart made before stopping. The Empire convened a war council. Vice Admiral Carthex urged caution. He'd studied the ancient Terran archives, the half-buried myths passed between dead empires like warnings in broken glass. The council laughed him out. Ancient ghosts didn't kill fleets. Rebellions did. Misfires. Rogue AIs. Anything but what the data screamed. They sent a battle group. 30 destroyers. 5 capital ships. Thousands of troops. The fleet vanished before it reached the outer ring. No distress calls. No survivors. That's when the fear set in. Not among civilians. They were fed the usual propaganda. Mechanical failure. Spatial storms. Classified tech tests. But the admirals knew better. Something was hunting them, and it moved with a precision that mocked their doctrine. Carthex was reinstated. He warned the council again. If the signals were Terran, if the legends were real, then they weren't facing a species. They were facing a force that had slept long enough. And if it was awake now, then something had drawn it back. He was ordered to assemble a reconnaissance fleet. Not to fight. Just to verify. Just to confirm the impossible. 17 ships departed the spiral's edge. 17 ships crossed into the dark zone. Only one made it back. The flagship, Ortha's Blade, drifted into port with its engines fused, its hull torn, and its command crew all dead. Only the automated core survived long enough to broadcast a single frame, a silhouette against a burning void, walking calmly across the ruined bridge of a Zarkathan dreadnought. Humanoid. Tall. Armored in jet black. Its eyes glowed red. The council fell into panic. Colonies were reinforced. Border sectors were evacuated. Archives were reopened. For the first time in millennia, the Empire admitted it had no idea what it was dealing with. And then came the signal. One word. One frequency. Broadcast across all channels, layered in harmonics that breached every encrypted band. Just one word, pulsing with ancient rage. Humanity. No fleet followed. No message after. Just that single declaration. Worlds that once claimed neutrality begged for protection. The Empire swelled its forces at the spiral's rim, calling veterans, conscripting systems, resurrecting war machines that hadn't walked since the Desolation Wars. But none of it stopped what came next. First were the probes. Black, sleek, utterly silent. They slipped past defenses like ghosts. No weapon signatures. No energy spikes. Just silent orbit, observation, withdrawal. In some cases, they weren't even detected until the footage surfaced days later. Images of empty cities, of barracks left undisturbed, of command centers watched by unblinking lenses. Then the first strike came. A fortified listening post on Thetarim, built into an asteroid chain with a self-contained fleet. It was designed to withstand a siege from 3 systems. It lasted 7 minutes. The footage recovered was fragmentary. Flashes of black armored figures moving faster than any known soldier type. Weapons that pulsed in frequencies designed to disrupt neural resonance. Ships that bent in ways no Zarkathan engineer could replicate, folding space like paper, warping around physics rather than obeying it. When the Empire counterattacked, they struck empty ground. Every location the humans had touched was already abandoned, scrubbed, cleaned with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. No DNA. No tech. Just the absence of presence. Then came the artifact. Delivered by drone. Placed at the edge of the Council's own starspace. It was a cube, dark, polished, humming with a pulse like a heart. When opened, it released a burst of code. A history. Their history. It told of Earth. Of the wars. The exodus. The decision to disappear. To vanish into the black and leave the galaxy behind. And it ended with a warning: we were peace. You brought us back. No Empire dared respond. Carthex, now in full command of the Defense Initiative, argued for diplomacy. He was ignored. A counterfleet of 80 ships launched a preemptive sweep of the Black Zone. None returned. Not even wreckage. The Empire screamed for blood. Pride would not allow them to retreat, not from a ghost. They commissioned the Doom Legion, their elite. Cybernetically enhanced. Genetically perfected. Each warrior bore enough firepower to vaporize a city. They were deployed to the edges of human interference. They never engaged. Every Doom Legion outpost was found weeks later, frozen in place, weapons unfired, minds broken. Each soldier was alive. Brainwave activity stable. But they stared ahead, motionless, locked in a silent scream. Doctors tried to revive them. Nothing worked. One woke just long enough to whisper, "We saw it." The human. Just one. And then died. The galaxy began to fracture. Independent systems seceded. Trade alliances collapsed. The Zarkathan throne issued a blackout. No more information would be released about the human threat. All contact was classified. All deployments secret. But they couldn't hide the silence. Because human signals were now everywhere. Not attacks. Not invasions. Just presence. A freighter disappearing over a desert moon. A patrol detecting a pulse signature 5 light-years beyond the rim, identical to Terran fusion cores. A single soldier found dead, eyes wide, weapon untouched, mouth whispering a name never spoken aloud. The name was always different, but the word that followed was always the same. Human. When they struck next, it was deliberate. A weapon depot orbiting Threxnol, surrounded by minefields, AI drones, and defensive satellite. It vanished in a single hour. Not destroyed, missing. The station, its orbit, the satellites, the minefield, all gone as though erased from time itself. Then came the message, encoded in the power core of a Zarkathan warship drifting out of bounds. It read, "You feared monsters. You created them." The Council offered surrender. There was no answer. That's when the refugees started arriving. Not from war. From silence. Entire worlds abandoned overnight. Populations vanishing without struggle. No bodies. No combat logs. Just cities left standing, power still running, meals still warm. Humanity wasn't killing. It was removing. The Trinari High Command had no protocol for myths that proved real. Their fleet had expected a token resistance, some orbital satellites, perhaps a few retaliatory missiles. Instead, their dreadnoughts fell, one by one, without warning or comprehension. Admiral Krell stood at the helm of the flagship Goran's Blade, reviewing telemetry that no longer obeyed known physics. Human vessels appeared where sensors claimed vacuum, struck with weapons that weren't supposed to exist, and vanished again before counterfire could lock on. Across the battle grid, vast arcs of red bloomed losses. Elite escort formations broke formation, confused and screaming. Their AIs were overwhelmed by encrypted signals too fast to decode. One command frigate even fired on its own, manipulated before its captain could override. "Impossible," Krell muttered, but the feed didn't care for his disbelief. Human warcraft weren't just advanced. They were predatory. Purpose-built. One pierced the Thar's pride in 2 shots, one to disable the shields, another that atomized the core. And yet no human pilots were visible. The ships fought like instinct, no delay between decisions. It suggested direct neural integration, something the Trinari had outlawed as inhumane centuries ago. The Admiral ordered a retreat. He didn't issue it verbally. He keyed his implant directly, signaling all vessels to fall back and regroup at Vanter's Edge. But only a third responded. The rest were silent, already gone or jamming communications with pure chaos. Not all ships were lost. Some were simply captured, and that was worse. Human code spliced through hull interfaces and seized control in seconds, locking out entire command crews. He turned to the bridge tactician. Estimate human force strength. Unknown, the officer answered grimly. They don't move like a unified fleet. They're a pack. Independent yet synchronized. Worst case, we're prey. The word lingered like a toxin. Predators were an evolutionary phase, surpassed by the Trinari generations ago. Yet here stood a force that had perfected it, weaponized it, and returned it to galactic war with surgical cruelty. In orbit over Grelos II, the humans didn't bombard cities. They severed power grids, hijacked orbital defenses, and left the planet blind. They moved with precision, not malice, warriors, not conquerors. They destroyed only what resisted. But the resistance was built into Trinari pride. That pride cost them 87 planetary defense ships in a single rotation. The High Marshal of the Western Reach attempted diplomacy. A channel opened with a delay of 0.3 seconds, a subtle insult among superluminal-capable species. The human reply was text. 1 line. You fired first. We finish last. The Marshal collapsed after reading it. Not from fear. From memory. The humans had been a story in her youth, a race so volatile the old empires exiled them beyond mapped space. A myth kept alive in warning tones. Now they were real, and they were answering a summons the galaxy had long since forgotten. In system after system, human strike groups unfolded like shadow logic, narrative predators who didn't just fight but understood. They knew what to target, who to spare, and how to humiliate without waste. One Trinari battlecruiser was left adrift with a single life support beacon active. The captain, alone, left to tell the tale. On the diplomatic world of Kethral, envoys gathered in panic. Crothan of the Jalari, who'd once laughed at human myth, now wept as he decoded the message etched into the ionized rings of his homeworld. You shouldn't have awakened us. But not every species feared them. Some remembered. The Tarsari monks had long preserved data fragments from before the Exodus, the humans' exile. When one of their archivists uncovered a matching flight signature from the assault fleet, he whispered, "They never left. They just watched." Internal panic spread through the Trinari systems. Mercenary fleets disbanded rather than fight. Entire border worlds switched allegiance, declaring neutrality. And Earth, if it even still existed, remained silent. The humans said nothing more. Their weapons spoke for them. Admiral Krell sent a last message before destroying his own flagship to prevent capture. It read, "They are not reclaiming territory. They are correcting a mistake. We were the mistake." In the outer systems, the tide became doctrine. "Don't provoke the shadows," civilians muttered. The name, human, was no longer spoken in contempt, but in awe. Even pirates altered course to avoid their patrol zones. One rogue commander tried to loot a world under human interdiction. 3 hours later, his fleet reappeared, every ship hollowed, crews missing, the hulls drifting as tombs. The Senate of Galactic Affairs held emergency sessions. Votes were meaningless. Every attempt to intercept or negotiate met silence or surgical response. Yet humanity didn't conquer. They liberated prisoners, destroyed slave rings, dismantled weapons labs the Trinari had spent centuries protecting. It wasn't vengeance. It was judgment. An AI core captured by the Karate revealed partial human mission data. Only 3 words translated coherently: balance through fire. Still, humanity never identified a homeworld. Every fleet bore different emblems, tactics, and dialect. They weren't united by government. They were united by principle. One thing above all else: do not harm Earthkind. A young cadet asked her superior what Earthkind meant. The response: if you have to ask, pray you never find out. Refugees began arriving from fringe systems once loyal to the Trinari, carrying tales of human arrival. One merchant saw a fleet descend, disable the tyrants with pinpoint orbital fire, and leave without landing. They don't stay, she whispered. They just end the cruelty and vanish. Soon, planets began broadcasting surrender preemptively at the first sign of a warp ripple. Human ships never responded. They only arrived for justice. When a high-ranking Trinari Inquisitor defected, he brought map. He expected asylum. The humans arrived 3 hours later. They didn't attack. They simply retrieved him, silently, bypassing all defenses. When they left, every security system on the planet rebooted with a new directive: you are no longer prey. What terrified galactic leaders most wasn't human power, it was precision. No collateral damage. No chaos. They were the myth, but refined. Death had become deliberate. The archives of the Voran Technate unearthed a forgotten pact, an ancient declaration signed in fear, not respect. The humans had promised exile if left alone. That promise was broken when the Trinari invaded a system near their border. The Trinari never knew the name of the star. But humanity remembered. A final message was captured from a derelict relay station. Human text again. Legends don't die. They wait. The station self-destructed moments later. By the end of the campaign, 57 systems had ceased military production. The economy of war had collapsed. Academies rewrote doctrine. Children learned not of conquest, but of restraint. And still, the humans said nothing. They moved on, leaving behind shattered empires, freed populations, and a question none dared answer aloud. What happens when legends stop waiting? Galactic broadcast channels flickered as silence replaced state propaganda. Where once proud empires declared dominance, only static remained. Trinari High Command was dissolved in secret, their command codes overwritten by an unknown signal. Entire fleets powered down mid-flight, their reactors locked by untraceable override command. Captains were left helpless, floating in the void, waiting for judgment that never spoke, only acted. The humans didn't install governors. They didn't raise flags or claim territory. They didn't broadcast ultimatums. They operated by an older law, one the galaxy had buried under centuries of bureaucracy and lies: justice without permission. Those who enslaved were dismantled. Those who exploited were erased. Those who watched in silence found their cities dark, their comms jammed, their weapons turned to molten scrap. In the orbital drydock above Jaren Prime, a 1,000-year-old weapons platform vaporized without warning. No fleet approached. No weapons fired. The entire station simply ceased to exist. Human quantum displacement weapons weren't just theoretical anymore. They weren't a threat. They were a response. The Trinari war machine, designed over centuries, funded by fear, collapsed under the weight of a single truth. Humanity had stopped playing by the rules everyone else wrote. Diplomatic probes were sent into the void, each loaded with apologies, treaties, reparations. None returned. One was found days later, suspended in orbit around a lifeless moon, its message still broadcasting: "We accept your surrender. Stay out of our way." Worlds once loyal to the Trinari defected en masse. Governors staged their own trials, tearing down statues and rewriting planetary laws overnight. The fear wasn't just of destruction, it was of irrelevance. Humanity didn't want to rule. They wanted the lies undone. And the galaxy didn't know how to function without someone demanding tribute. The Jalari Syndicate tried to reposition itself as neutral, declaring the war a trinary mistake. A human fleet disabled their orbital economy in under 4 minutes. Every resource satellite, every trade beacon, every encrypted vault, shut down and erased. The Jalari people weren't harmed. Their infrastructure was untouched. But their power vanished, as if history no longer acknowledged it. On the abandoned colony of Corin's Reach, a lone AI broadcast a plea for peace. It admitted its creators had tortured thousands in genetic experiment. The human reply wasn't fire, it was forgiveness. The AI core was extracted and rebuilt, given a new identity and freed from its programming. It joined the human fleet the following month. The message was clear: cruelty was punishable, but change was respected. This confused the remaining galactic powers. They'd prepared for retaliation, not redemption. The humans weren't conquerors. They were curators of balance, a species that learned too late that power without control meant extinction. Now they wielded that lesson like a blade, cutting only where rot had grown. Entire cultures shifted. Education systems erased centuries of propaganda. The concept of human became synonymous not with species, but with principle. A code of conduct passed through fear, written in shipwrecks and silence. Children no longer studied politics. They studied restraint. They learned how humanity watched, judged, and spared only those who saw truth and bent to it willingly. Deep in the Perseid Rift, an old warlord launched a revenge fleet, cobbled from mercenaries and forgotten cruisers. He claimed to have discovered the location of a human staging ground. His fleet never arrived. Weeks later, his flagship was found intact, floating, its crew missing. On the command deck, a single phrase was carved into the floor: "This was mercy." The galactic economy changed overnight. Arms production dropped by 90%. Planets shifted to agriculture, medicine, education. Resources once hoarded for war were redistributed. Former slaver worlds became havens for refugees. The shadow of humanity didn't demand tribute, it inspired reflection. Those who changed were ignored. Those who refused were removed. The Varnock Tribunal, once responsible for annihilating entire species, attempted to sue for peace through a proxy. Their fleets were disabled, but their records were left intact. Human operatives leaked every atrocity ever committed by the tribunal across the galactic net. Entire populations turned against them. Their leaders were tried by their own people. Not a single human touched their soil. The power vacuum created wasn't filled. It was flattened. Species once marginalized rose with new voices. Trade networks flourished in the absence of corruption. Even pirate clans disbanded, unwilling to risk attracting attention. The myth of the human fleet had become a constant, no longer a threat but a condition. Like gravity, like fire. No one knew where the humans would strike next, or if they would. Some believed they had already left, task complete. Others insisted they were everywhere, watching, waiting for the next injustice to correct. What became certain was that they were not gods, nor devils. They were the consequence of arrogance left too long unchallenged. On the edge of the Mertan expanse, a research station detected a subspace signature identical to the one that preceded the first fleet arrival. Panic ensued, but no attack came. Instead, a signal pulsed once, a single wave of data. When decoded, it displayed one word in every known language. Enough. It was not a threat. It was a conclusion. And then, no more ships arrived. In the years that followed, monuments were built, not in honor of humanity, but of restraint. Great libraries opened access to forbidden knowledge. Military academies were replaced by schools of ethics. Interstellar cooperation became necessity, not luxury. The shared fear of the unknown became a shared hope for continuity. New alliances formed, not for protection, but for healing. Systems long scarred by war opened dialogues. Art flourished. Science pivoted toward sustainability. The galaxy had survived not because it was strong, but because something stronger had intervened and left. That absence became sacred. Only a few artifacts remained. A shard of armor from a human boarding party. A data core half decoded, full of names and coordinates no one dared explore. A message written on the walls of an old prison, where human operatives had freed thousands without killing a single guard. We remember everything. Generations passed. Children asked if the stories were real. Parents hesitated. Truth had never needed belief to exist. The ships had been real. The silence had been real. The change was undeniable. But Earth was never found. Its location remained secret, buried under so many layers of disinformation that even the best quantum arrays could not pinpoint its echo. Some believed it had moved. Others whispered that Earth was no longer a place, but an idea, reborn in every act of resistance against cruelty, in every whisper that said, "We can be better." The legend endured, not because of what the humans took, but because of what they gave back. And the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, understood peace not as a pause between wars, but as the default state of a civilization that had learned, at last, to listen when a myth said, "Don't make us come back." Let me know if you'd like a compiled version of all 3 sections or a short teaser/summary for video purposes.